Hello, sweet grievers. Mandy here. Restorative grief is all about creating easy access to healing, no matter where or who you are. That's why I want you to remember that if you want grief support beyond a podcast, then perhaps it's time to consider a one-on-one coaching connection. You don't have to implement all these grief strategies alone, you know? Use the link in the show notes to learn more at mandykpart.com/coaching or reach out to me on social media because I'm here for you, okay? Now let's get on to this week's episode. Welcome back to Restorative Grief with Mandy Capehart. You are listening to episode 137, titled Untangling the Knots with Jordan Nahmias. After 12 years as an entertainment lawyer, Jordan Nahmias realized he was missing something. With a successful business, a new baby, a healthy family, a safe home, everything we define as success was in place, and yet, Jordan noticed a longing for things left behind. So rather than remain, he opted for authenticity and leaned into a new career path with creativity at the forefront. His work as a coach and consultant invites us to answer our calling into big changes, deeper purpose, and more meaning as we heal and live. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Restorative Grief with Mandy Capehart. I'm your host, Mandy. And of course, we have a wonderful guest today. I'm really excited for you to meet Jordan Nahmias. He is a former entertainment lawyer who went through a whole lot of shifts in life, as we all do, to become a vocational coach, but also to help others untangle the knots of life just like he did. So his story is rich. It has this beautiful growth path that I hope you are inspired by and excited to dig into. So I'm really excited to welcome you, Jordan, to the show. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So I gave a little snippet, but why don't you give a little bit of a richer picture of who you are and why you have a passion to help people unwind the things that bind them?
Well, it's interesting. You said, untying or untied the knot, and it's, that knot is still being untied, right? Like it's this process that probably never ends. And maybe accepting that is the easier part. But in terms of just, summarizing my own story, I practiced law for about 12 years. I was an entertainment lawyer, as you mentioned, and that was fun. It was a cool business. It is a cool business. It looks glamorous. It's law. It's not that glamorous. But for me, what led me there was the desire to still be involved with the arts and creative projects and making things. And if I was going to be a lawyer, I was like, well, I have to do something connected to that. So I started a practice after law school, and hung a shingle, went out on my own. It went well, luckily I worked very hard at it. And over the course of, let's say, 10 or 12 years, built a practice and a firm. When I left practice, we had a couple associates, a partner, name on the door. And I think sometimes from the outside, that might look to people like, oh, wow, you have it made. As a lawyer, you work for yourself, you have decent hours, you're making a good living, and there's a lot of prestige and yada, yada, yada. And that was great. But I also, hit a wall. And I think at that point in life, we had just had our first child. This is coming out of the end of COVID. We built a house. There was a lot going on personally and professionally. And I found myself just less and less interested in the work. And I also found myself longing more and more for the things that I thought I had shelved to be a lawyer. Creative projects, family time, being more expressive, basically like not pretending anymore. Yeah. And that was challenging. And so in some sense, I guess to the topic of what we're talking about today, it was like I had spent all this time grieving this path that I had chosen not to go down, even though I think that's what I really wanted to do. And then pursued law because it was what I was supposed to do. And then now, and then leaving was very, very hard. It's not easy to leave a long time career and a good income and all the other things that come with it. And then now it's like grieving that still. And I know we'll get to that, but it's an interesting process because it continues to unfold. It's like, oh, okay, one more thing.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I really think that's interesting too. I want to stay there for a minute with this idea of this is the career I created, what I felt I was supposed to do. This is the career I felt really drawn to, because I think the typical advice, and correct me if I'm wrong, is do the thing that brings you to fully alive, right? Pursue the career that makes you feel the most fulfilled. And I don't know about you. I have had multiple, draws into different career paths over my life. And I certainly have had many careers, but I think that that's necessary. I honestly, in this generation, don't know anyone who has said, oh, I wanted to be a nurse when I was at 6 years old and I did everything right. And I've been a nurse for 30 years and I'm perfectly satisfied. That worked really well for like our parents' generation. The world has changed so much that I don't know. What's your opinion on that kind of advice? Like, you wouldn't be who you are today if you weren't a lawyer for 12 years, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So how do we balance that? How do you balance that grief versus, well, this was a necessary process? It's not the same flavor of grief that we experience when we say are, mourning a death or mourning a relationship, something. It's a different style of grief. And so it's an interesting approach, I think. So what would you say to that?
Well, the first thing you said about, following, it reminds me of what Joseph Campbell said, which is like, follow your bliss. And some people think that is just what you should do and others don't. And there was no bliss for me in going to law. It was more along the lines of what I think not all, but a lot of lawyers end up doing, which is you're smart, you do well in school, but you're not really sure what to do. So you just apply to law school. And then once you're on that path, it's pretty straightforward. You get into a school, you're already in like a much higher caliber of, let's say, student. So it's not going to be that hard from there on. You're going to get a job. It may not be the dream job, but you're going to get some job. And if you want to keep sticking it out, then you can. So it's hard to jump the track, because once you're on the rails, it's like, okay, like I'm sitting on these rails and like it's pretty determined.
Okay.
But as far as like transitioning out, there's a loss that happens with it where part of it feels like a death. So you lose the relationships that you have in a way. I had all these clients, I had a partner, I had employees, and now I'm not in that world at all. And so I have those relationships still, but they're changed. And that hurts, to tell you the truth.
Yeah.
It's sad. And then there's, of course, the loss of identity. And so that is for me, the bigger one. And it's still a hard one. There are a lot of days where I'm like, well, what did I do wrong? Like, how could I have salvaged that? Could I have squeezed more time out of that? Was I crazy to leave? Was this a huge mistake? And so that's the kind of like trying to go back in time and rescue this thing that was probably dying or dead. And now what I try to do with some success some days is like just be very grateful for it. Because you're right. Like, I would not be where I am had I not gone through that process.
Sure. And
so I have no regret about being a lawyer, and I have no regret about going to law school, and I have no regret about listening to that professor in university be like, hey, you should check out the LSATs, right? But I would be lying if I said I don't wonder, like, but what if I didn't do that? So there's this weird balance of wondering, and then there's all the emotions that come with that, of like missing something, sadness for not having done something, joy for getting out of something I didn't want to do anymore, fear for like what's coming up after this, because now it's like that chapter is gone. And even on my worst days, as much as I want to go back to it because it was so certain, I know it's gone. And so there's an expanse in front of me, which, by the way, is not unique to me. I mean, that's a lot of people I work with. That's fundamentally what we're dealing with. It's the idea of, okay, if I leave this, like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I confess I kind of pushed you into a catch there, because I have heard from every person I speak to, right? I don't know if what I'm doing in life is right. And you summed it up so beautifully by saying, what did I do wrong? Was there something more I could have squeezed out of it? Could I have gotten more? And that sense of regret that my path was wrong, that I've gone the wrong direction, is so quickly replaced by my sneaky question of, but you got so much good out of it and you're not who you would have been by now, right? Because that's how quickly we jump. And it's as if we are trying so hard to avoid the pain, the loss of certainty that you beautifully identified, that we get overwhelmed by the uncertainty instead of capable of seeing, okay, well, wait a minute, there's still me right here in the middle of this. There's still these people that I'm connected to in one way or another. And of course, transition happens. Of course, we become different people to one another. That's the nature of life. And so our work then becomes, well, how do we disentangle ourselves from things that we've maybe over-identified with or become really stuck within or really connected to, even when it disallows us to be that person we really, truly want to become, that true self coming to the surface. So it sounds like you've really transitioned yourself and help your clients see that kind of like, it's not a broken thought process, but it is a very truncated thought process of, oh, well, at least I had them and everything's okay. And now I'll move to the next good thing.
Yeah. And it's when we do that, we dismiss like the richness of the whole thing.
Yeah.
And that serves a purpose, of course, because we have to keep moving. Yeah. But at the same time, there's such value in the richness of that, let's call it a prior story. Yeah. Because we can only really learn from that. I mean, like, for instance, again, I'm only doing what I did because of what I did before. And I was able to draw the things I liked and learned and got good at what I used to do as a lawyer, and in some ways translate that into what I do now. Yeah. So it's tricky because, like, you have to embrace, this is so glib, but you have to embrace change because it's inevitable and it's always happening. And yet we are very good at holding on to things. Yeah. And we are also very good at remembering the negative, because the positive is so easy to dismiss, but the negative is how we learn, I think anyway, how people learn lessons. But the utility to that, especially as we get older, becomes more limited. So, yeah, that's something where I find we minimize our pain in a way that we think makes life easier, when really we are minimizing the entire experience of life. It's not polypositive all the time. It's not simple. And that transformation of who we were into who we are becoming is really where we start to develop, like, well, what's possible for me? And that sense of creativity comes to that surface, and that playful heart of who we've always had within us. And I know there are a lot of people in life that you could look at and say, that person has never been playful at a moment in their life. It's not possible. And yet we were all children. We were all really young. We all learned about a swing at the same time at some point and had this like euphoric experience, right? So there has to be a way that even as responsible adults who have jobs and bills and whatever, that we still find a way to bring that into the work that we do, even though culture and capitalism would rather have us do nothing. So I'm curious, do nothing fun, really. Please produce more for me. So tell me about the way that you bring this into your practice. How do you show up with your clients who are also kind of recognizing, well, what now? It's a good question. And the answer is actually at least partially in what you just said. So there are two things. Number one is possibility. So we have to, with anybody who comes with a big question and particularly wants to make a big change, there needs to be a possibility. There needs to be an idea that change is possible and that there is some shape of that possibility. And at first that could be super broad, like I just need out and I just need something different. But we work together to shape what that possibility might look like. And sometimes that's really quick. And sometimes that takes a really long time. And I've found both in my own experience and then working with others that the possibility part of it is very hard to make concrete when we're still thinking about the past. because the past is fixed. It's like you can't change it. And so there's very little possibility in the past. It's a limiting story. But when we're looking forward in that expanse, which can be terrifying, of course, there is a lot of possibility. It's a blank page. It's a blank canvas. You can effectively create whatever you want in that, subject, of course, to life and practicalities and those sorts of things. But at least there's something we can aim towards and shape. So that's a big part of it. From there, that's when we can start to think about like action, right? So it's like, okay, what is the specific little thing that we can do to move towards that possibility, and make some plans and really work on practice. So that's a big chunk of what I do with people. It's very much a practice-based practice, where a client, let's say, is very closed off, just using this as an example. So we might do some practices that include journaling around, what ideas did I have today? Which ones feel realistic to me? Which ones feel possible to me? How did I get in my own way of making those things happen? We could do a somatic practice where they lie down on a bolster, once a day for 15 minutes and just feel like their chest open. Right? So there becomes this at least physical sense of spaciousness happening. And then, of course, moving, our bodies are communicating with our brains all the time because they're effectively just the same thing. And, sending our body a message is going to start to send our minds a message too. Or we could do awareness practices, where during the course of a day, we set a reminder, 3 times, let's say, okay, what am I feeling right now? What's happened in the past few hours that has given me a sense of opening or a sense of possibility or a sense of opportunity? What did I learn from that? What could I do with that tomorrow? And so practices or habits or rituals, and they're all different words for fundamentally the same things, start to build in these patterns for people to move forward and to start really seeing that, oh, I'm not actually stuck. Because if I can make this little change in my day-to-day habits of journaling once a day, then I can build on that, right? I can make a bigger change of working out every day, or I can make a bigger change of setting one interview once a week, or doing 3 coffees with people for networking, once a week. I could go on and on and on here with examples, but the point is that it's a way of working where the client is leading themselves and I'm just offering little things they can do that maybe will start to get them to be, oh, whoa, I do have some power. I do have some control here.
Yeah.
Yeah. I hope
Do you
that
find
helps.
that many people who come to you start with more of a fixed mindset that feel very like, oh, I'm sure you're the fixer and I'm just the go along. Whereas you just put it perfectly. It's what I say too. I'm like, no, I'm just a navigator.
Yeah, absolutely. I had one client who, and I'm very grateful that we still work together. But she said to me, she's like, wait, so you're just not going to tell me what to do? And I was like, absolutely not. I'm like, first of all, you're not going to like my answers anyway, fundamentally. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And even if you did, how is that like going to be internalized by you? How is that something that you're going to take in the long term and realize that you did it? And by the way, that is a huge challenge for me personally, because lawyers are generally fixers. So I've been trained to just go in and fix problems. And it's very hard for me to turn off my advice button, my fixing button. But when I am able to, it is incredibly freeing, because I'm able to let go. I'm able to remind myself, I don't have any control over what this person is doing, and I don't need to have any control over what they're doing. And then when I do that, I learn in incremental degrees about my own life. You have no control over your life generally either. And so the more I work on my own practices, the more I have that sense of, oh, okay, like I'm still moving towards these things that I need to do to feel whole and to be myself entirely, and to build a practice that is of service and is fulfilling.
I don't want to get too far off of you and the 2-part question that you were answering, but I do have one more question. You mentioned you have the ability. I love this. I would like this ability too, please, to turn off that fixer mentality. And that's so many of us, right? When we're in helping positions or service-oriented roles, it's because of the people that have helped us and the things that we've learned, right? We've internalized it. We want to offer it to others. Is there a way for anyone listening that you could share your own, like, this is the thing, this is one of the things that catches me in the middle of my giving advice when I should be behaving curiously or becoming more curious for them? What are some of the little like, oh, hey, flag here, Jordan, bring it back in, that you could share? Because someone else probably needs to hear it too.
Sure. And actually, I'm really glad you're bringing this up, because this goes to the second part of the answer, right? Which is
beautiful,
which is productivity. So most of us feel like we need to be producing all the time, and that's fundamentally fixing. So how do I notice when I'm getting into that mode and then I need to sort of shift it off? One is I'm trying to listen to myself, and so when I'm speaking. And if I'm telling versus asking, then I know I'm not in a place of curiosity. I'm in a place of, okay, I'm just zoned in and I'm trying to provide answers. By the way, there's a place for that, but it's not going to allow me to pull a thread that's going to help somebody else as much as asking questions. So that's number one. Number two is I listen to my pace of speaking and I notice like how I'm breathing. Wow. So if I'm short of breath, then I know that I am more targeted in like my mindset, and which means I'm probably also in like a fixing mode. And by the way, for me, I notice that when like my throat gets tense. So that's where I like do my holding thing. People do it in their bellies. People do it in their chests. I'm doing it right now because I'm talking and answering a question.
Yeah.
The other thing is I try to just leave as much space as possible and allow questions to come. So this is the hardest one, which is like just sitting in silence with people and letting like the discomfort of that open up space for like questions and curiosity to bubble up. It's kind of like this thing like with boredom, you know, like you need to be bored in order to make art, right? Because if you're just busy, then there is no opportunity for weird things to happen. So that's another one. I would say that's the hardest one for me, but it works.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I don't know, it just works.
I was telling my daughter the other day, she's almost 10. Hey, I know you're bored. I love that for you. I'm so excited to see what comes of it. And she was like, I know what you're trying to say and I don't like it. And I just thought, that's fine. I don't need you to like it. Sorry that your mom is super comfortable with discomfort, kiddo. Good luck with the art supplies. Find something to do. And she did. And she was thrilled. And like, of course, I did not put her nose in it and say, see, I was right. It was that moment of like gentle openness, like you're describing with yourself, really, which I really love that. I get on the same hyper speed of speech because as a grief educator, that's one of my favorite things to do. Right. And when someone is like, this is what's happening. And I see them connect the dots, I'm like, let me paint the bigger picture. Also, I'm so sorry. Your scope is very limited and I just flooded it. Okay. Starting over. So tell me how that all feeds then into the productivity piece you were talking about.
So in the productivity piece, it's very similar in the sense of if I am speeding along and what's that being motivated by? It's being motivated by making providing an answer or fixing a problem or filling a hole. And that's just productivity. That's just producing. And for better or worse, you know, we live in a culture that is generally focused on that. There are pros and cons to that. And it's easy for us to get stuck in that because I think we attach meaning to that. And we attach meaning to like, how productive have I been? Like as a lawyer, my meaning was very much tied into how many hours did I bill today? How many dollars do those hours translate into? How many problems did I actually fix? How many deals did I actually close? Now, on one hand, there is immense meaning in that. I mean, I was of service to a lot of people and I helped get things made. And for me, that was particularly meaningful because what I was helping get made were movies and TV shows. So that's something I care about very much. And I was helping people get that done. But measuring my worth by that is where I made a jump that I think was incorrect. I think that devalued myself. And I think it also missed like the innate worth that I have, which I'm, by the way, still figuring out. That's a big challenge for me personally. But it missed that innate worth that what I was tying to productivity, when in fact it's not tied to anything. It's not tied to anything besides just you are you. And that might sound woo woo, you know, but like whatever. I mean, it's an important thing for us to understand. I get trapped in it all the time, all the time. You know, I'm very early in my practice still. Like it's, you know, I practiced law for 12 years. After 12 years of practice, you're really busy all the time. It's not hard to get work, but when you start a new business, okay, you have those challenges that come with that. And there are more days than not where I am thinking, oh boy, you know, I'm not a success, right? Because I'm not as busy as I used to be. I'm not making as much money as I used to make. And that's a distortion. That's a distortion that I'm making of myself.
Yeah.
So that's a frequent challenge, I think, for most of us, this productivity piece.
Yeah. Well, and it's only considered wooey, right? Because we've been programmed to diminish our humanity, to say what you need, even if it doesn't seem meaningful for me, is okay, that's what we want to hear. We want to hear, hey, you are inherently valuable. Your humanity, your dignity, your personhood matters significantly more than anything else. And it's rare to find employers who believe that. It's rare to find spouses who believe that. It's rare to find peers that can believe that. And so when you start to believe that, when you start to say, well, actually, I have great value, let me set a boundary to protect my value. Let me set an expectation to communicate my value and my worth. People get weird and start, you know, accusing you of, oh, you think you're something. Yes, in fact, I do. And I think you're something too. What would change if you believed that for yourself? I think that's such a crucial question. And it comes up in life coaching and grief coaching, because that's exactly it. We don't hold space for ourselves because we think a space for everyone else matters more.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, when you're in service, that can happen too, because you're trying to be helpful. You want to place people ahead of yourself. And, no, the only way you can truly help others is by really, really recognizing your own value, because that is the value. I'm just presenting myself fully, and I'm just honoring myself fully. And in that, you know, there's like this alchemy, to use another woo-woo term, when somebody else is around that, when somebody else is in the presence of that. And so there doesn't need to be this trying. There doesn't need to be this producing. There's just a being with. Yeah. And that can be like very, very powerful.
Yeah. Well, let's take it out of the woo-woo world for a minute and put it into neurobiology, right? Because that's actually your nervous system attuning to someone else that says, I'm safe here. There's belonging and safety and security in this relationship. Something within them resonates with something within me. There's nothing like well, it is otherworldly if you ask me, but there's nothing that's like supernatural and unsafe and untested. That's the person you show up with that's calling like to like, that's saying like, hey, actually, we were designed for connection and relationship, and we thrive within it. And that includes relationship to ourselves. And I think that that's really so undervalued in our culture, as you know. And that, I think, is why even when you could sit back and be like, cool, I'm not billing as many hours. I had 30 clients last month in my lawyer practice, and today I have 3. They're not equitable. It's a completely different way of showing up for yourself, because those 3 are receiving so much more of you, which is ultimately the work we're trying to do, is, like you said, offering of ourselves and offering what has developed within us in a different way. Yeah,
exactly. And those are those parts of ourselves that we've kind of hidden or shelved or just put aside temporarily. You know, to bring those out can be painful, but it's also necessary. And it doesn't make the things that you were doing before any less worthwhile, right? Or the parts of you that you were using more, any less worthwhile. It's all just grist for the mill.
Yeah.
And that's important.
How do you help clients understand that it all belongs? That's one of the big roadblocks people hear me say, especially when we're dealing with trauma and loss, right? If I say it all belongs, I'm also not saying this needed to happen in order for. I'm saying, how do we create space, right? So how do you help people ask that question?
Noticing practices, so basically sitting and just noticing what's coming up when we talk about certain things. And, more often than not, it's, oh, I'm feeling this negative thing. I don't want to talk about it. I want to get away from it. And it's like, well, wait a minute. Let's just try to just close our eyes and just feel that and look at it. Just look at it. And, usually there will be a little more resistance that comes up there. And then where's that coming from? Probably some sort of fear. And then we sit with that. And then, we watch as the thing changes and it starts to diminish, or it morphs into something else, or there's a message that comes through. And fundamentally, it's all about just looking at the thing and paying attention to what's coming up when we're looking at the thing. And I know I'm using vagaries here, but that's basically the practice. I don't know. I mean, I could think of better ways to explain it, but I'm not going to, because
no, I don't think you should.
Yeah.
I think it's important to leave it open-ended, because we're all listening to podcasts and audiobooks and interviews to try and find ourselves in it, right? We're trying to find, how does this apply to me? How did I show up here? And there's a place for really specific stories. And I think there's a place for really big invitations, which is what you're offering. This opportunity for someone to really get uncomfortable with themselves and say, okay, well, Jordan told me to just sit and wait and see what comes up. And that sounds terrible. And I'm like, yeah, I tell people the same thing. Sit down and be quiet. Wonder for a minute about who you are. Honor who you are and what comes up. Because that's, I think, from my experience, that's where it gets really challenging when we say, hey, sit and just wait for a moment. What surfaces we don't necessarily have language for, right? So that's part of the work, is helping develop language and identify things that are surfacing. But I think the other part of that is just honoring, hey, discomfort's actually necessary. Muscles don't grow without tearing. I'm so sorry that no one let you believe that we've hidden that truth from you. You're safe here to do this thing. So I think that that's a really important way to just leave it open-ended for people to say, oh, dang, okay, well, discomfort, here I come. We're not.
Yeah, we're not.
No, we're not.
Yeah, inevitably, it will come for you. And you're going to have to be okay with it.
Yeah. I have a friend who talks about grief education before you're grieving as grief insurance. And I'm thinking along the same lines too, because I'm just like, yeah, it really is. It's coming for you. We know transition shows up. We know your job will change. I've often said, this is not the final job you'll have. This is not the last house you'll live in. Knowing full well, that could possibly be not true, but that's not the point I'm trying to make, right? The point is, you are headed in a direction, your choice. Do you go begrudgingly, kicking and screaming, or do you go with a sense of opportunity, with a sense of possibility, with openness, and curiosity about what might be before you and how you'll show up on that? How do you, quick transition because my brain does this. How would you talk to someone who's like, okay, I'm in a relationship. I am full of possibility. I am full of forward thinking. My partner is not. I don't want to go home and just educate, because that's what we know, right? We know our clients that are partnered go home and then struggle to communicate what they're learning because they're still learning it themselves. How would you talk to that client or give them advice on how to bring their person in? And it's a completely random question, but it hit my attention because I think it's necessary. We don't want to turn our clients into educators of their closest relationships, but we do want to help them keep thriving in that. So,
it's a good question. The first thing I would normally recommend or ask is what is your vision for this? Right. So what do you want this to look like? If now is not the thing that you want, or not the way you want it to be, then how do you want it to be? And let's start from there. And then from there, it's okay. Well, what's the next immediate step you could take that's going to move you closer to that way of being? right? And I would, and this may be counterintuitive, but fundamentally, I would make this entirely about the person that I'm speaking to. It would have nothing really to do with about the partner, and that's not because people don't change. People change, but it's about really understanding and preparing for what is going to come up when this person finally decides, hopefully, to have the conversation that they don't want to have, and to ask the questions of their partner that they probably don't want to ask. And above all, really, to be vulnerable in a way that they maybe have not done yet. Because that's going to be probably hard. And there's going to be a lot of things that come up. And so when that happens and you're in the middle of the cyclone of emotion that's coming up as you are exposing yourself and being vulnerable and having this conversation that you probably have built up into something, how can you stay centered? What are you going to do to walk into that and be, okay, I know what I'm doing here, and I don't know exactly how this is going to go, but I know myself. And if I know myself in all of this, then I can navigate whatever is going to come up around me.
Yeah.
That would be one way.
Oh, I think it's a great way. I love that. I asked because I had someone ask a similar question on social media not too long ago. And I just thought, well, this is a longer answer than I can offer you in a caption. But staying really present with yourself and true to who you are and what you are pursuing, yes, as a partnership, but also just as an individual, and doing that work for ourselves. We stay present with ourselves. We do not abandon ourselves. And that's really where we've been trained as, humans producing goods for others to do, is abandon ourselves. So I love that answer. Jordan, how can someone get in touch with you if they're just inspired and intrigued and excited to think about their own possibilities in working with you?
The best way is to go to my website, which is jordannahmias.com. Second best way is find me on LinkedIn. And other than that, I don't know, find out my address, send me a letter. But no,
Show up with coffee.
Yeah, I love coffee, so I'll take it. But yeah, no, those are the best ways to get in touch with me.
Okay, cool. Well, Jordan, thank you for making space to connect with me and bringing your wisdom and your insight. I think it's really necessary and grounding. As much as this work is hard, it's always encouraging to see others out in the world actually making it a safer, gentler space for people to fall into. So thank you for your work and your time.
My pleasure. And thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to episode 137 of Restorative Grief. I love how Jordan started our conversation with a statement that he was no longer pretending in his life. The pretense of shoulds and expectations of others keep us locked away from our own hopeful nature. So I hope this conversation helped awaken a part of you that may have long been dormant. Learn more about Jordan's work in the show notes. And of course, please be sure to subscribe, share, and leave a review for the podcast too, because we love hearing about what you get out of this work. And before we go, as always, one last thing. Please remember, the only solution for grief is to do the work of grieving. Thank you for listening. I'll see you next week.